My brother crashed my car and laughed. Relax, it's just a car, he said. But when I handed him the repair bill, his face dropped. Then he saw the total cost and tried to run to our parents for help, but they had a surprise for him. All right, Reddit. Buckle up because this one is a doozy. I never thought I'd be posting here, but my brother's entitlement finally reached a breaking point, and I need to get this off my chest. To start, let me introduce the key players. There's me, 28M, my younger brother Ryan, 24M, and our parents. Now, Ryan has always been the golden child. Growing up, he got away with everything: bad grades, skipping school, breaking things, you name it. My parents would excuse it all with a boys will be boys attitude, while I was expected to be the responsible one. Despite the favoritism, I did my best to be a good brother. I worked hard, saved up, and bought myself a car, a beautiful, dark blue Mustang that I adored. It wasn't brand new, but it was my pride and joy. I took care of it, kept it spotless, and made sure it was always in top shape. Ryan, on the other hand, treated cars like disposable toys. He had already totaled one of my parents' cars, and they just shrugged it off and got him another. So, of course, when he asked to borrow my car for a quick trip to a friend's house, my answer was a hard no. Come on, man, Ryan whined. It's just for a couple of hours. I'll bring it back in perfect condition. I didn't trust him at all. You literally crashed mom and dad's SUV last year. That wasn't my fault. He shot back, but we both knew that was a lie. I stood my ground and refused. But my mistake was leaving my keys on the counter that evening. The next morning, I woke up to a sick feeling in my stomach. My car wasn't in the driveway. Panic set in as I ran back inside. Where's my car? Mom looked up from her coffee, confused. Didn't Ryan take it last night? My blood went cold. I grabbed my phone and called him. He picked up on the third ring, sounding way too casual. Oh, hey. Yeah, about that. I cut him off. Where is my car? I mean, it's fine, but my heart was pounding. There was a little accident. I didn't even hear the rest of his excuse. I was already out the door, my parents following behind me, as we rushed to the location he gave me. And when I saw my car, I nearly collapsed. The front was completely smashed. The hood was crumpled, one of the headlights was shattered, and the bumper was barely hanging on. My beautiful car destroyed. And Ryan? He was standing there with his hands in his pockets, looking completely unbothered. Relax, dude, he said with a smirk. It's just a car. Just a car. I saw red. You stole my car and wrecked it. And that's all you have to say? I shouted. He shrugged. Insurance will cover it. Oh, he had no idea. I turned to my parents, expecting them to swoop in and defend him like they always did. But for the first time, they actually looked furious. Ryan, my dad said in a tone I had never heard before, "You're paying for this." Ryan's smirk faltered. Wait, what? You heard me, Dad said. You stole the car. You crashed it. You pay for it. I had already called a tow truck, and while we waited, I pulled out my phone and did some quick math. The repair estimate? It was going to be brutal. When the tow truck arrived, Ryan actually had the nerve to ask me to cover it. Dude, I don't have that kind of money, he said, laughing nervously. I handed him the bill for the estimated repairs. His face went pale. There's no way I can pay this, he stammered. That's not my problem, I said coldly. And that's when he tried to run to our parents for help. But they had a surprise for him. Ryan turned to our parents, eyes wide with panic. Mom, Dad, you're not actually serious, right? You're not going to make me pay for this. Mom crossed her arms. Ryan, you stole your brother's car. This isn't some little mistake we can just ignore. Dad nodded. We've let you get away with too much, and it's time you face the consequences. Ryan let out a nervous laugh, like he thought this was some elaborate prank. But when he saw the looks on our faces, reality started sinking in. No way, he muttered, shaking his head. Come on, you guys always help me out. Why is this different? I scoffed. Because this isn't just about you being reckless. You stole from me. You knew I wouldn't let you take my car, so you waited until I was asleep and took it anyway. I stepped closer, my voice low and firm. That's not an accident. That's a choice. Ryan swallowed hard. But, I didn't think it'd be a big deal. It's not like you can't get it fixed. Do you even hear yourself? I snapped. You don't think it's a big deal because you've never had to deal with the consequences of your actions. Mom and Dad exchanged a glance before Dad spoke. Ryan, you'll work to pay for every penny of the damages. And before you even try to argue, we're not paying for a cent of it. Ryan's jaw dropped. But I don't have that kind of money. Dad didn't budge. Then you'd better find a way to make it. Panic flashed across Ryan's face. This isn't fair. What am I supposed to do? Mom's voice was firm. Get a job, Ryan. I swear, I've never seen my brother look so offended in his life. A job? You expect me to just get some minimum wage job and work for months just to pay for this? That's exactly what we expect, Dad said. Ryan turned to me, his expression desperate. Dude, come on. You know I can't afford this. Can't we just work something out? I folded my arms. We were working something out. You pay me back. He groaned and ran his hands through his hair. Okay, what if I just give you half and we call it even? I let out a sharp laugh. Absolutely not. Ryan's eyes darted back to Mom and Dad, but they weren't backing down either. That's when I saw it. The moment he realized he wasn't getting out of this. The golden child treatment? Gone. The safety net? Pulled out from under him. And then, in true Ryan fashion, he tried to shift the blame. This is your fault, he suddenly snapped at me. If you had just let me borrow the car in the first place, I wouldn't have had to take it without asking. You're making a huge deal out of nothing. I stared at him, completely floored. You think this is my fault? Yes. He shot back, face red with frustration. You're my brother. You should have just let me take it. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my temper in check. Ryan, do you even hear yourself? You stole my car and wrecked it, and now you're mad that you have to deal with the consequences? He threw his hands up. I can't believe you're all ganging up on me. This is so messed up. Dad sighed. Ryan, stop. You made this mess, and you're going to clean it up. Ryan was still fuming, but for the first time in his life, he had no escape route. He stormed off, muttering under his breath, and I let out a slow breath. Mom turned to me. We'll make sure he pays you back every cent. I nodded. He needs to learn. And as much as Ryan thought he could talk his way out of this, he had no idea what was coming next. Because I wasn't just going to sit back and hope he paid me back. I had a plan to make sure he did. For the next few days, Ryan did what Ryan always did. He sulked, complained, and avoided responsibility. He barely spoke to me, except to throw in the occasional passive-aggressive comment like, hope you're happy ruining my life. But the funny thing, my life had never been better. For the first time, my parents weren't enabling him. They were standing firm, and Ryan was losing his mind over it. A week later, my dad called a family meeting. We all sat in the living room. Ryan slouched in his seat, arms crossed like a petulant child. Ryan, Dad started, have you figured out how you're going to pay for the damages? Ryan scoffed. I told you, I don't have that kind of money. Mom sighed. Then you need to start working. Ryan groaned, tilting his head back. Oh my God, I knew you were going to say that. Why can't we just, I don't know, figure something else out? Dad folded his hands together. Like what? Ryan hesitated, clearly hoping someone would jump in with a solution for him. No one did. Finally, he sighed dramatically. Fine, I'll get a job. I expected my parents to be relieved, but instead, Dad leaned forward and slid a piece of paper across the coffee table. Already found you one. Ryan blinked. Mom spoke up. Your uncle's friend owns a landscaping company. He's agreed to take you on as a laborer. It's full-time, pays weekly, and you start Monday. Ryan's jaw dropped. Wait, manual labor? Yes, Dad said. Ryan looked horrified. You expect me to go outside and what? Mow lawns all day? Carry heavy stuff? In the sun. That's generally how landscaping works, I said dryly. Ryan turned to Mom, hoping she'd back him up. Mom, you're okay with this? She nodded. It's a fair job, and it'll pay for the damage you caused. Ryan shook his head, his face twisted in disgust. No way. I'm not doing that. Dad's expression darkened. Ryan, you have no other options. You either take this job, or you find another way to pay for the car. But make no mistake, you will be paying for it. I watched as Ryan's panic started creeping back in. He glanced at me, and I could see the gears turning in his head. You're my brother, he said slowly, as if trying a different approach. Wouldn't it be better if I just, helped you out with stuff instead? Maybe I do some favors for you, and we call it even. I laughed. Oh, so now you want to help me out? Where was that energy when I told you no before you stole my car? Ryan scowled. Dude, come on. You don't actually expect me to do yard work like some loser. Dad's patience was wearing thin. You have until Monday to decide. Take the job, or come up with the money another way. Ryan's fists clenched. This is so unfair. No, Ryan, Mom said firmly. What's unfair is that you stole from your brother, wrecked something that didn't belong to you, and expected everyone else to clean up your mess. Ryan muttered something under his breath and stormed out. Dad turned to me. If he doesn't take the job, let me know. We'll handle it. Monday rolled around, and unsurprisingly, Ryan didn't show up for his first day at the landscaping job. Instead, he slept in until noon and spent the rest of the day acting like nothing was wrong. I knew this was coming. He had spent his whole life avoiding responsibility, and I could tell he was hoping this would all just blow over. Dad wasn't having it. That evening, he called Ryan downstairs and handed him an envelope. Ryan opened it and his face drained of color. It was a formal repayment contract. You refused the job, Dad said. So now you'll be repaying your brother directly. This document outlines a payment plan. Ryan's eyes darted across the page. The total amount owed was listed at the top, every cent of the estimated repair costs. Below that, the terms were broken down. He had a set amount of time to start making payments. And if he failed to do so, my parents had the right to start seizing his belongings to cover the debt. This is insane, Ryan mumbled, gripping the paper. You can't just force me into this. Dad's voice was calm but firm. Ryan, you stole and totaled the car. If this were anyone else, you'd be dealing with the police right now. That part wasn't a bluff. I had considered filing a police report, but ultimately, I decided I wanted Ryan to be forced to fix this himself, not get let off easy with some legal slap on the wrist. Ryan sat there, staring at the paper like it might catch fire in his hands. He opened his mouth, probably to argue, but then he saw Mom and Dad's expressions. No sympathy, no negotiation. For the first time in his life, Ryan had backed himself into a corner with no escape. The next morning, he started making desperate calls, begging friends for money, trying to sell some of his gaming gear, even asking distant relatives for help. No one was interested in bailing him out. His reputation had caught up with him. The most satisfying part? Watching him squirm. For years, he had skated through life, dodging consequences and letting others clean up his messes. Now, with no one left to rescue him, reality was finally closing in. And as much as he wanted to ignore it, the deadline for his first payment was looming. A few days passed, and Ryan's desperation started showing. He came home late one evening, slouched, looking completely defeated. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. His posture alone told me everything. He had no money, no plan. The first payment was due that Friday. I could tell he was hoping my parents would give him some kind of break, but they stood their ground. By the end of the week, it was clear he hadn't come up with anything substantial. Friday evening, as I was sitting in the living room, Ryan walked in and dropped an envelope on the coffee table. He sat down across from me, looking both embarrassed and angry at the same time. You're going to be disappointed, he muttered. I opened the envelope. Inside was a single check, barely a quarter of what he owed me. "This is it," he said flatly. "I've got nothing else. So, you're just going to have to accept it." I looked at him for a long moment, my expression unreadable. "No, not even close." Ryan blinked, his face starting to turn red. "What do you mean, no? That's all I have." "No," I repeated. "This is the first payment. You owe the rest." I handed him the check back. His eyes widened in disbelief. "What? You're going to take everything from me, aren't you?" I stood up slowly, letting the weight of the moment sink in. "No, you'll take responsibility for this, Ryan. Every single cent. And if you don't," I paused, letting the words land, watching him squirm, "then I'll make sure the authorities know exactly what you did. You can explain to them how you stole my car, wrecked it, and now can't even make a decent attempt to pay back the damages." His face twisted, the anger flashing quickly before fear took over. His lips moved, but no sound came out. He knew I was serious, and for once, there was no way out. "You can't do this," he said weakly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm your brother." I took a step forward, staring him down. "I'm your brother, sure, but I'm also the one who had to deal with the mess you caused. I've spent my whole life picking up after your mistakes. This time, you're cleaning up after yourself." The silence in the room thickened. Ryan stood there, seething, caught in the realization that his usual tricks weren't going to work. Then, in an outburst of frustration, he stormed out, swearing under his breath, clearly plotting some way to avoid paying. I didn't care. This time, there was no room for negotiation. I wasn't giving in. 2 days later, Ryan showed up at my door. His face was pale, his shoulders slumped like someone had drained all the energy from him. He handed me an envelope. Inside was a check, but it wasn't enough. Not even close. I looked at him, barely hiding the smugness that was bubbling up inside me. "You really thought this was enough?" Ryan's gaze dropped to the floor. "I did everything I could. I don't want to keep doing this. I don't want to keep running." I didn't answer right away. I just looked at him, that familiar sense of satisfaction filling me. But there was also something else. A part of me felt bad for him, but it was buried beneath years of frustration. He had burned too many bridges. Ryan took a shaky breath, his voice barely audible. "I'll finish paying, okay? I'll do whatever it takes. Just please, don't make me lose everything." I studied him for a moment. This wasn't the person who always found a way to worm his way out of responsibility. This was the broken version of Ryan, the one who had finally realized he couldn't keep being the villain in everyone else's story. But it was too late. "Good," I said, my tone cold. "But next time, don't ask for help unless you're ready to pay for it. Because this is your mess to clean up now. I'm not your safety net anymore." Ryan nodded, his shoulders slumping even more, and I knew then that he was finally getting it. He had always been the one who skated by, lying, manipulating, and never facing any consequences. But this time it was different. This time, there was no one left to save him. I closed the door behind him, my mind racing. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction, anger, and relief. My brother, the one who always played the victim, who was the golden child, who never faced a consequence in his life, was finally being held accountable. But was I in the right? Or was I just as bad as him, taking pleasure in his misery? So, here's the question. Am I the a-hole? Should I have helped him more? Or am I justified in finally standing up for myself? And, honestly, who's the real villain in all this, me or Ryan? I'm really curious to hear what people think. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss an update. Share your thoughts in the comments below.